Alaska, The Last Frontier isn't your average reality program, as any viewer who has tuned in can tell you. This is a glimpse into a harsh environment where staying alive isn't guaranteed and each day is filled with excitement. One individual, Jane Kilcher, stood out in the middle of that wilderness. Does anyone recall her? The fiery, no-nonsense fisherwoman who appeared prepared to face any difficulty in Alaska with a grin or a scathing remark, depending on the situation. What happened to Jane Kilcher, though? That is the question that fans have been wondering recently. Rumors and whispers began to circulate rapidly than a snowstorm after one day of relative calm on the Kilcher homestead. A few have wondered if she has really departed from Alaska, while others have speculated that it may be a family issue or a sign of her upcoming projects. Come with me as I take you on a wild ride through Jane Kilcher's life. You may put your faith in the story since it is just as unpredictable and wild as the Alaskan wilderness. Reality TV actress Jane Kilcher was unique. Through it all, she provided the unifying force that made Alaska, The Last Frontier, so memorable. You could always tell that Jane was being herself, whether she was deftly casting a line for fish or firmly asserting her ground during family arguments. If you ever found yourself marooned in the Alaskan wilderness, she would be the ideal companion to have by your side. She became an anchor for viewers during the tough times of homestead life. She was hilarious, full of heart, and tough. The illustrious Kilcher family was not born to Jane Kilcher, but became an essential character in their Alaskan saga very soon. Viewers recognized her as more than just Otsley Kilcher's wife as she became a part of Alaska, The Last Frontier. She was the unique individual who figured out how to survive in one of the planet's most hostile situations. In the Alaskan town of Homer, Jane spent her childhood not far from the Kilcher property. Jane Kilcher was an expert fisherwoman, in contrast to her agricultural and hunting-oriented relatives. She possesses special abilities thanks to her upbringing near the water. There were times when she caught fish when nobody else did. Her contribution of that was just remarkable. Jane frequently took it upon herself to supply the family with fresh fish, an essential source of nutrition in the harsh Alaskan wilderness, on the episode. It was very hypnotic to watch her skillfully negotiate frigid waters or reel in enormous salmon. But fishing wasn't Jane's only responsibility. She provided the show with the much-needed balance. Jane brought a touch of comedy and wit to the often serious and austere Kilcher men. She had a natural talent for interacting with the audience, whether she was joking around with Otsley or making light of a serious situation. In the harsh world of Alaskan survival, she was also brave enough to express when she was worried or overwhelmed, a quality that was unusual for most people. Jane was also a link between the Kilcher way of life and the outside world. She added new insight to the program because she had lived her life away from the farm. She proved that one need not be born into a farming family to prosper in the wilderness by fully embracing it, even if she was not born into it. Her admirers rallied around her because of how relatable she was. Unfortunately, Jane's story isn't without some bumps. Her trip, like the weather in Alaska, has been full of ups and downs. Rumors about Jane's life off film, including family feuds and intensely personal issues, might be just as dramatic as anything that was shown on screen. She started to be more guarded about her private life as time went on. She felt there should be more to her tale than being depicted as Aslea's wife or the fisherwoman, and she frequently voiced her anger over it. She loves her daughter Piper very much, is fiercely independent, and, despite her prominent profile, treasures her privacy. And then, in 2023, a shocking turn of events occurred, shattering all your assumptions about her story. Suddenly, she and Otsley Kilcher split up. How, therefore, did Jane transition from being a cherished Alaskan frontier star to publicly facing some of life's greatest obstacles? Living the dream on TV isn't the whole story, though. Some positive twists and turns occurred in Jane's story, as they do for many TV personalities. And a few of them were very difficult. On The Last Frontier of the United States, Jane stood out from the beginning. However, difficulties arose when the show's popularity led to increased scrutiny of her private life. Jane initially had no problem with her portrayal as the fisherwoman. It is true, in the end. When she holds a fishing rod, she acts like an expert. However, she began to feel confined as time went on. To put it simply, she was more than simply a fisherwoman. She was an autonomous, complex, and multi-layered individual. Unfortunately, those alternate perspectives weren't always given enough airtime on the program. The homesteading drama and the Kilcher men made her character flat and uninteresting. Jane was more than simply a fisherman. There was more to her than met the eye. She was a wife, mother, and more. She has spoken frankly about her dissatisfaction with the portrayal in interviews. Stereotypes about fisher women persisted, and it made Jane unhappy. Leaving out the challenges, tough choices, and personal growth she went through off camera, she believed the show's editing choices didn't necessarily portray an authentic image of her. Despite the fact that she was more than that, the film generally focused on her as a fishing boat woman. On Alaska, The Last Frontier, Jane Kilcher had a character who became rather disregarded, so let's examine this more closely. Ultimately hinges on the dynamics inside the family and the show's decision to highlight some members more than others. Like Alaska itself, the Kilcher family is large and varied. In the head of the family is Otts Kilcher, a patriarch who has seen it all and is tough as nails. As Jane's husband, Otts Lee Kilcher, is his son, things get a little dicey. Brave, daring, and full of love for the earth. Jane, on the other hand, appeared to be the ideal counterpoint to the typically stoic Kilcher males at first look. Her distinct position in the family was shaped by her strength, capability, and grounding. Her character, however, began to take a back seat to the survival escapades enacted by the Kilcher men as the series progressed. I mean, come on. The state of Alaska. The Kilcher Women's Show isn't the name of The Last Frontier. The family's strong, independent men are the center of attention. Most of the time, it was Otts and Otts Lee who were in the limelight, fighting their way through the woods and getting themselves into perilous circumstances, while challenging conventional wisdom. However, Jane frequently took a second seat, occasionally serving as an ancillary character in the overarching story of survival. The editing was also detrimental to her. We witnessed the men's difficulties with all their intensity and emotion, but Jane's problems and triumphs were frequently minimized or relegated to her role as the fisherwoman. To begin with, Otts Lee, Jane's spouse, is an intricate human being. The camera shows him as Otts Kilcher's daring and adventurous son. He has a rebellious streak that causes friction within the family. Dealing with his inner issues, his untamed side, and his profound bond to the wilderness frequently put him in the spotlight on the show. A different aspect of their relationship exists, nevertheless, outside of the show. As with every relationship, Otts, Lee, and Jane's had its share of challenges. Still, it seemed that Otts Lee wasn't quite as invested in Jane's tale as he should have been during the evening. Hers was frequently overshadowed by his, what with all the drama and emotional troubles he faced. What is true? Jane seemed to be keeping it together. She excelled at homesteading while also being a mother, wife, and independent woman. Her subtle power, meanwhile, was not always on display on the show. Jane remained unseen as Otts Lee took center stage, whether it was to face grizzly bears or confront his own demons. Caring for her loved ones, running the household, and meeting their needs, all while avoiding the dramatic flourishes. The show's editing decisions clearly emphasized the Kilcher men's passionate and inflated personalities. Even though Otts Lee and his dad had plenty of opportunities to explore their own hardships, Jane's story was frequently neglected. That doesn't discount Jane's star power, though. She simply did not receive the attention and airtime that she merited. Family strife rumors began to circulate as the performance progressed. Although the Kilchers come across as a close-knit family, there were tensions and arguments going on behind the scenes. The press reported that Jane and other members of the Kilcher family were feuding. When everything is being scrutinized, even the smallest details can be magnified. The allegations about Jane's strained relationships with some of her relatives simply served to heighten the already present family drama narrative on the show, which really shouldn't come as a shock. Now for the unexpected turn of events. Despite the many criticisms, Jane also received encouragement. The genuine her was revealed to her devoted social media followers. The mother who shared joyous moments with her children was a caring person who had private challenges but always had her family's backs. As viewers came to understand that television portrays only a small portion of an individual's life, the initial outcry gave way to a surge of support. Supporting the authentic Jane, they stood at her side. Not merely the flat depiction they had witnessed on television. Jane has kept her chin up through it all. She's managed to embrace her role on the show while also recognizing the challenges it presented. Beyond her work in film, she has established a life that defies categorization and editing decisions. She refused to let the criticism from the public derail her, rather, she embraced it as motivation to be authentic, continue her journey, and reveal a new part of herself to her admirers. Though Jane may have begun her reign as Alaska's fish-catching queen, the last frontier, she has become so much more. Ultimately, she proved to the world what it is to be strong by fighting against misrepresentation and forging her own path. However, her resilience was truly put to the test when unexpected challenges arose in her life. Even though we've all seen Lee thrive in the brutal Alaskan environment, he ended up in a real-life survival story after a near-fatal accident. During a 2015 hiking trip with a companion, Lee suffered a catastrophic fall from a precipice. Seriously, this is a major fall. Things seemed bleak for a while after he fractured several bones, including those in his arm, leg, ribs, and maybe other areas. It took him a long time to get back on his feet. Everyone knows how much of a burden it is when a loved one goes through a difficult time. Feelings, habits, and connections. Nonetheless, Jane remained steadfast. She really came through for Lee during his recuperation, while simultaneously keeping everything running smoothly at home. Personally, I thought Jane's courage shone through at that point. It was genuine, yet unassuming and unglamorous. Nevertheless, speculation regarding their union intensified at that point. Their relationship had taken a major hit after the disaster. Would it be able to withstand the mental and physical strain of their recovery? Marital strife was the subject of widespread speculation. Supposedly, Jane was becoming more reclusive and Lee was battling his own troubles, putting a strain on the once solid Kilcher union. Being in the spotlight makes it hard to recover quietly, doesn't it? Jane, though, kept her cool in the face of the reports. Neither did she engage in public controversy or reveal anything to the press. Rather, she remained devoted to her family, demonstrating that she was always there for Lee in his time of need, despite the fact that she was involved in other matters. Unabated, the rumors continued. Was the marriage between the Kilchers really as strong as it seemed, or was it a partnership in crisis? Many people wondered. For someone accustomed to being strong, self-reliant, and in command, like Lee, the experience was a wild ride of emotions. Not only was he recovering from a fall, but he was also adjusting to a new sense of self. Since he was now more reliant on Jane than ever before, Lee had to adjust to a new way of life. However, mental and bodily exhaustion weren't the only factors. The dynamic of their relationship changed. Among the Lee family, had always been the most daring and defiant. Plus, Jane had always been there to provide stability and encouragement. It all came crashing down, though, when the disaster occurred. Despite his history of independence and strength, Lee needed Jane more than ever before. They were both taken aback by the role reversal. Tensions arose because Lee had a hard time accepting assistance, particularly from his wife. With her husband, who had been so independent before, now completely reliant on her, Jane felt the burden of caregiving and struggled emotionally. This made her feel frustrated underneath. Not only does their partnership face internal strain, but it is also pressured by the public nature of their lives. For Alaska, the last frontier, cameras were constantly rolling and documenting every aspect of their existence. The media and fans' unrelenting scrutiny made matters worse. Even though they never came out and said they were having marital problems, it was obvious that the accident's aftermath had put a strain on their relationship due to the constant scrutiny and public support they received. Despite the challenges they faced, Jane and Lee were able to overcome them and continue their love. Resilience, as only genuine hardship can mold. Their relationship was tested in ways they hadn't anticipated by the real obstacles they encountered during and after the disaster. Jane Kilcher and Lee did not suddenly decide to part ways. There were several obstacles, some plainly visible and others less so, on the path to their formal separation. How did it all play out? Let's examine it more closely. As word spread that their marriage was on the rocks, rumors and guesses began to circulate. It's common knowledge that dealing with unwelcome speculation is a common part of living a public life. However, the marital strife between the Kilchers was plain to see. Rumors circulated about an increasing rift, with some speculating that Jane felt she was alone in the relationship's burden. However, 2019 was the year that finally broke things. Jane and Lee were already coping with emotional and mental fallout from his tragedy. After the accident, it was obvious that neither of them was the same person. Jane and Lee Kilcher shocked their admirers and followers in 2023 with the heartbreaking choice to announce their divorce. It was a devastating and illuminating speech, but at last they said their mind after years of rumors and speculation. It wasn't easy, but they finally resolved to tackle the problem directly. Jane spoke frankly about her grief in the formal statement. She elaborated that although both parties had to make the decision, it was not without significant emotional suffering. Jane revealed that she and Lee had become distant due to the toll that years of emotional and personal hardships had imposed on them. The candor with which Jane shared her emotions was the most remarkable aspect of her remarks. She was very blunt about it. She admitted that the disillusionment, sadness, and pain that accompanied their divorce were real feelings. Their followers on the last frontier, Alaska, could feel the authenticity in her remarks. Even though his remarks were more controlled, Lee did issue a statement as well. Although he didn't dwell on the emotional side of the split as much, he did acknowledge it. He understood the need of going on, and his statement reflected that. Lee was obviously still dealing with the divorce in his own way, he just wasn't as forthcoming as Jane about his own problems. But they both made it plain that they weren't hostile toward one another. There was no drama in the split. Accusations and public brawls did not occur. On the contrary, it appeared as though the lovers had accepted the inevitable conclusion to their romance. Despite the pain, it looked like they had to accept that they had developed in separate ways and needed room to grieve on their own when they made the decision to divorce. Jane and Lee appeared to go their separate ways in the years that followed. Though he kept a low profile outside of work, Lee remained an integral member of the show. Similarly, Jane put her health and those of her children first, avoiding the limelight. Although their formal separation was a difficult chapter in their lives, it was also an opportunity for growth for them. That each person required space and time to recover. Is there more to their story than what they've told us, or do you think they made the correct choice in divorcing? Thus, where does Jane Kilcher go from here? Waiting for life to happen was not something Jane was willing to do. She's stepping up to the plate, eagerly embracing new experiences and adventures. Bering Sea Gold has been one of her most recent adventures, taking her into frigid seas. It has been an incredible journey, I must say. Anyone familiar with the process of burying sea gold can attest that it is far from easy. Watching this show is like taking a bet with Mother Nature. The water is icy, the stakes are enormous, and the mining for gold is at an all-new level. However, for Jane, this is merely the latest setback in her relentless pursuit of personal growth. She's proven time and again that she's not scared to get her hands filthy, or rather, drenched, by leaving the hard life of the homestead for the excitement of the dredging boats. She left the rough mountains for the unpredictable waters of Nome, Alaska, and her agricultural tools for dredge equipment when she joined the cast of Bering Sea Gold. Both metaphorically and physically, Jane has dove headfirst into this new world. She got her start in the gold dredging industry in 2021 when her pregnant friend, the experienced captain of Bering Sea Gold, Emily Riedel, needed a reliable dredge manager. Immediately responded to the call, as if it were a dare. On the Kilcher farmhouse, though, this was no ordinary day. Both the Bering Sea's frigid waters and the strain to discover gold are unforgiving. Jane had to learn the ropes of undersea mining, leading a crew, and surviving in one of the world's most hazardous industries in a flash. Initially, there was a significant learning curve. There was scary gear, terrible weather, and potentially difficult crew dynamics. Jane, however, is not one to back down from a fight, as we have seen firsthand throughout the years. She steadied herself, little by little. She was a master of the dredging techniques, a star among her crew, and she added her characteristic grit to the part. Her ability to adapt and flourish in the face of such adversity is truly remarkable. Will her exploits in the gold mining business be the last of her daring exploits, or is this only the start? Jane makes it so hard to tell. That is the captivating aspect of her narrative.